Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. Jaime Munguia reverses the defeat to Bruno Surace of France. You'll remember he was knocked out about 6 months ago, whatever it was, last year. And it was a shocker because Surace came in with 4 KOs and he'd been on the floor and he produced one almighty right hand that knocked Munguia flat. Munguia was coming off a points loss to Canelo. So shocker of the year, definitely upset of the year. But this time round, I have to say, Munguia looked very, very impressive. And, mentally, there were going to be inevitably a few, doubts or perhaps he had to be cautious of going in there and being too cautious, if you know what I mean. There was an element of, there's always an element of, I've just been knocked out by this guy. Early on, I need to be a little bit, I need to mind my P's and Q's. I need to watch out for those, the punch that knocked me out last time. And sure enough, you could tell that Surace was looking for that punch, that big right hand. He fired a few of them, and every time he fired them, the crowd would go, "Ooh," remembering the knockout from last year. And I'll bet Mr. Munguia, Senor Munguia, remembered that knockout punch as well, because he sort of worked his way into the fight. He boxed conservatively to start with, just to get his feel for the event, just to get back into the swing of things. Okay, he'd been stopped. I've always said, you learn your lessons the hard way. I think I'm talking about learning the lesson the hard way. That definitely occurred to Munguia last year. But they can just be lessons, and you can reverse. You can reverse the negative into a positive if you go about your work in the right way. You have the right people helping you, which Eddie Reynoso is in charge of Munguia now. Canelo was in the dressing room giving him a few little pointers before the fight. And this was a very intelligent performance by Jaime Munguia. I got to say, I was a bit surprised because Munguia was previously known as a crash bang wallop merchant. Wildly exciting. This fight wasn't exciting at all, but sometimes you got to win and look good next time, as they say. But in all honesty, it will look exciting next time because he did look good. He looked very, very good, Munguia. Boxed intelligently, quite conservatively, and then sort of edged his way into the fight. He was front-footed without being in any way reckless. And Surace, if you look at his record, he hasn't been, I don't think he's ever been 12. And I don't think, has he ever been 10? I did look at his record earlier, but I can't remember. But he's not done a lot of rounds, sort of beyond 8. So, and you can see why he's only got 5 KOs on his record, albeit, one of them against Munguia, is that he is a pure counterpuncher. He doesn't try to hit you hard. Probably the Munguia fight, lightning in a bottle. Well, he was losing that fight and he had been on the floor, so maybe he thought, I'm just going to wallop you. But Munguia, of course, in that fight was extremely reckless. He was the polar opposite in this fight. Working his way in, being aggressive, winning the rounds. I think I had it 116, 112 to Munguia. It is slightly disappointing that Surace in the last 4 rounds seemed to be just quite content to just sort of, nitpick his way to a points defeat. A little bit disappointing that. I would like to have seen him give it his all in the last 4 rounds and really try and drag Munguia into a fight. But then so much easier said than done. Munguia does hit hard. Surace had been on the floor in the first fight. So, is Munguia back? I would say so, and I would say he's back with an awful lot of improvements. Maybe that really was a wake-up call, getting knocked out. Guy with 4 KOs knocks you out, you think, oh, blimey, anyone can do it. I got to stop relying on my chin, which is exactly how all fighters should be. We've seen it before, haven't we, with Munguia, with Joe Joyce, with a few other people that he's got this steel jaw. Well, you don't want to be hanging your chin out and letting people chip away at it. There has to be some sort of sensible approach. It is, after all, boxing, the art of, hitting and not being hit. And Munguia seems to have passed that point where where recklessness seems to be his calling card. This was a good performance against a guy who had previously beaten him, and he's exercised a few psychological demons, perhaps, and he's done it in a very intelligent, crafted way. This wasn't like, for example, Anthony Joshua rematch with Andy Ruiz, where he sort of skirted around the ring for a lot of the time. And I mean, Ruiz was way out of shape for that fight. But yes, okay, Joshua boxed very sensibly, very cautiously, very conservatively. But this wasn't quite like that. Munguia was on the front foot a lot of the time. He wasn't fighting scared. He was fighting cautiously. And I think there is a definite difference. So it was a good performance. A little bit disappointed with Surace, like I say, overall. Could have given more, but then he is a pure counter-puncher. He's just not some guy who wants to go forward. It just seems to be an absolute anathema to him. Sometimes you've got to fight out of your skin and out of your comfort zone, though, if you want to win the fight. I mean, we saw against, with Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr., neither of them stopped trying to win until the final bell. With Surace, I felt after 8 rounds, he kind of slipped into that almost like a sparring partner mode, which was a bit disappointing because he's probably got more talent than he might realise. But, let me know what you think. What do you think of it? Do you think Munguia's back? This wasn't particularly an exciting fight, but it was a necessary fight for Munguia to rebuild. So let me know what you think. Comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you know, and hit the like button and spread the word about Joe's Son of Boxing. I always appreciate your time. I will give your comments a read. Until then, bye for now.